What is up, diehards? Welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. It's Monday, baby, right here on Pub Sports Radio. All my degenerates hanging out in one place. We're talking UFC Vegas 49 from a sports betting perspective, and we are rocking the beautiful blue, the Die Hard stimulus check t-shirt, as is tradition when we come off of a winning evening, and it feels good. It feels so damn good off of getting my ass absolutely handed to me on the big UFC pay-per-view card to bounce back. I mean, it was a small win. We took a big swing at a couple of big spots. We damn near swept the board. I mean, you can make an argument for every single bet that we lost last week should have and very well could have cashed. The reads were on. We were all good. If you tuned into the Friday show, which, by the way, if you guys watch the Monday show and you're new to the podcast or you're just looking for, content for MMA, make sure you come back on Friday. Check out my undefeated post-weigh-in show because that's where I do my best work, and you can see the transformation I've taken on my opinion from Monday through Friday after we see the fighters on the scales and stuff. And I talked myself into being an intelligent sports bettor. I was very timid last week coming off of a giant L. There were several spots on the card that was like, I think I want to bet this spot. I want to bet this spot, but I'm probably wrong. So I stayed off of it. And I kind of bitch slapped myself on the Friday show in the face and basically said, you know what? Stop being a pansy. Don't be a little bitch. Sack up and make the bets that you know are good bets. And hey, here we are rocking a dub. So it paid off. It worked out. It feels good. How's everybody doing this evening? Shout out to the chat. We've already got 77 live viewers rocking with us tonight. What a number to kick us off here. Owen Carroll. We've got Joseph Nessenbaum. Grateful Dude. The Man Cave showing up. How's it going? Jonathan Reynolds. Let's see here. Sean V. UFC Shell. We've got Dylan Glenn. Lots of chat going on early. Eric Betts Fights. What's up, buddy? Thanks for hanging out. Josh Locks. All right, getting caught up. There's a lot of chat. Gaming Wolf 87. Sloppy Seconds. Dylan Glenn. I think I already said you. We've got Mike Reeves. People are starting to flood in now. How's everybody doing this weekend? I hope you all survived your Monday. Hope everybody had a good weekend. I hope everybody made some cash over the weekend as well. Donation shout out from the Espita family. Thank you for all the great content. Keep coming. Thank you very much for the donation. We appreciate it here at Pub Sports Radio. It helps. It keeps the lights on. And we're very, very grateful for you guys always tuning in, always being there for us, because without you guys, we wouldn't, have anybody to make the content for. So thank you very much for the mutual appreciation. Very, very happy to help you out. And hopefully we were able to make you some money last weekend. It was a good time. All right, folks. All right. We're getting caught up here. And I am filibustering just a little bit. I'm trying to burn a little bit of time here because tonight's guest, my guy James Lynch, OG, one of the top-notch guests that we have on this show. He is supposed to be our guest this evening. Now, it is a holiday up there in Canada. It is Family Day in Canada. So I know he's had a couple things maybe pulling him away. I'm not sure if there's maybe some kind of an issue where he kind of forgot what was going on. I'm not entirely sure. I've never had James be late or miss on a show. So we're just going to chill and maybe talk about last week's card for a minute while we buy a little bit of time, see if he jumps in here. Razor Sharp Picks, what's up, buddy? Thanks for joining the show this evening. So real quick here, I want to go ahead and go over, at this point, I can't brag too much because even though we had a good week last week, even though, in the last 3 weeks we're 2-1 positive speaking, the big UFC card dropped me a big 9-unit loss. So I'm still in the hole. So far in 2022, we are down 15 units. I did go ahead and put my record out there today for everybody to see. Those of you who are relatively new to the show, I've been doing this for about 3 years, ever since I started taking MMA betting seriously and doing the podcast and tracking and all that good stuff. I'm 2 out of 3 on years being profitable. Year 1, 2019, we went up 19 units. Year number 2, I blew the lead at the very end of the year, lost my mind on the last couple of events, and dug myself a 10-unit hole. And then in 2021, we bounced back nicely with a plus 35-unit profit over the course of the year. So yes, Yes, Josh Coyer, I lost 9 units on one card, and that's pretty normal for me because I am your friendly neighborhood degenerate gambler. I'm not a professional gambler or anything like that, so I like to have a lot of action. I play a lot of different bets. It's kind of my style. I buried myself in a hole to start the year actually last year, and we were able to dig out of it and end up being 35 units up at the end of the year. So not necessarily out of this world for me to be able to pull something like that off again this year. We don't want to hit the panic button. It's only February. Got lots of time to turn things around here. All right, folks, we are about 6 minutes in, and at this point, I don't want to waste anybody else's time. We got a 100 live viewers already jumping in the show, so let's start talking fights. I hate to go on without our guest today. James wasn't able to make it at this point. Not sure what's going on. Really just hope everything's okay on his side of things, because that's definitely not a normal thing. Please don't anybody harass him for missing the show or anything like that, because he's an amazing dude and he's a family guy as well. So I know if he's missing, there's a legitimate reason that he would be missing for the show right now. So apologies for no guest, but it looks like we're flying solo tonight. Just you and me. So lots of chat interaction tonight. That's always fun. We don't want to complain too much about that. Let's see here. First fight of the evening coming up here on Saturday is going to be none other than my man, Bobby King Green, stepping up on short notice to take on Islam Makhachev. And what a fight. I can't wait for this spot. A lot of people are really upset about this spot, and I don't understand personally. I have no idea how. First off, I don't have any idea how people couldn't be a fan of Bobby Green. The guy has been around forever. He's a Donald Cerrone type, where basically he's going to take any opportunity he can, step in against anybody, scared of no man. You love to see it. You absolutely love to see it. So stepping up here on short notice to fill in. Nobody else is going to answer that phone or take that call. Bobby Green already put a thing out on social media. He's like, I don't know why they even bother calling. I'm saying yes. And that's just the type of attitude that he has. Islam Makhachev, though, he's the second coming of Khabib. Khabib basically said that this is the kid that's going to take over for him. This is the guy that's going to end up being the next champion at lightweight and rule forever. So big, big ups from a guy like Khabib, maybe the greatest of all time to ever do it. And also big pressure. Lots of shoes to fill there for Islam Makhachev. He rocks 3.37 takedowns per 15-minute fight. So he's taking his opponents down, or at least attempting to, very, very often, landing with a 66% accuracy. So more often than not, when he wants that takedown, he gets it. He's got an 88% takedown defense himself. So not a whole lot of takedowns coming the other way. And then he's just methodical with his ground and pound, with his grappling. He started showing off some finishes recently. That was a big criticism that people had of him, is that he was basically just John Fitch. He was kind of laying on people and not doing a whole lot with it. Well, now he's choking people out. Now he's TKOing people. So Islam is rounding out. He's becoming exceptionally dangerous, and he's looking like a monster, quite frankly. There's not a whole lot else I can say about him than that. So Bobby Green, he's been one of these kind of middle-of-the-road, mid-tier fighters, just on the outside looking in at the top 10, top 15, and he's getting his big window, his big opportunity here. He's the kind of guy that he could fight forever in the UFC, but never quite get that big opportunity. He saw it and he took it. We'll see if he can work his way up into the actual contenders circle. He's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage in this spot, does Bobby Green. He's got a 72% takedown defense, which for me personally, just kind of eye test when I'm looking at fighter stats and stuff. Anything above 70% is generally going to be a half decent number. You like to see around the 80 or 90% range, but it's very, very hard for something like that to hold up in the UFC. It's not an easy thing to have that kind of a takedown defense rating. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and pause in my breakdown just slightly, because I have excellent news. We are joined by none other than James Lynch himself. James, buddy, how you doing tonight?
Doing well. Sorry I'm late. I got the times mixed up, but I'm here. Sorry to keep everyone waiting right now, but glad to be here, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure, James. And I apologies. You and I always seem to have time zone issues. If I quoted something wrong or something, my
No,
bad.
it was my bad. I went back and looked at the message. It was totally my bad. So yeah, apologies. We're 10 minutes late, but better late than never, right? Happy to be here, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we just did like a little bit of a recap from last week, talked a bit with the chat, and I was just getting to the good stuff on the Bobby Green Islam Makhachev breakdown. So you're not even that late. We're not missing out on much. Works out for everybody. I was just talking about kind of the stats and digging into the numbers here. And man, Bobby Green, 72% takedown defense. That's nothing to sniff at. And one thing I kind of want to remind people always when we're talking Bobby Green fights, it's not so much his takedown defense, James. It's the get-up game. He's got an urgency to get back to his feet. He's not a guy that's going to settle for bottom position and play jiu-jitsu, look for triangles. He uses good hooks. He's got good stand-ups. He threatens with Kimura submissions to work his way to the feet. Like, he knows he needs to be on the feet to win these fights. Every once in a while, he'll force a takedown and go after his opponent to just mix things up. But you're never going to see this guy, rolling for ankles or arm bars or anything like that from his back. So good, solid takedown defense. Good, solid get-up game. Obviously, the output on the feet from Bobby Green is ridiculous. Just shy of 6 significant strikes per minute, absorbing only 3.65. So he is way outpacing his opponents on the feet. And Islam Makhachev, mixing up my Russians here. Islam Makhachev lands 2.21 significant strikes per minute. But you got to think a lot of that is ground and pound. He only absorbs 0.79. So less than 1 significant strike per minute coming back on Islam. And that's just because that dominant wrestling. James, this is a 5-round fight, and dare I say, I actually think that favors a gas tank machine like Bobby Green. We haven't seen Islam tested all that much at the 5-round mark, but we've seen him get tired in the third before. Is it crazy to have Bobby Green as a plus 500 underdog? I mean, I took the shot on Dan Hooker, and he is in the exact same spot, filled in, short notice, taking on a monster like Makhachev, and it was over in 1 round. The difference, I think, between Dan Hooker and Bobby Green is, again, that takedown defense and that get-up game. Dan Hooker is tall, he's spindly, he's long. Those legs of his, he has no problem going down and grappling and looking for submissions and things like that. He's got a couple chokes on his record. I think Bobby Green's takedown defense and get-up game are a decent bit better than someone like Hooker's, but the short notice definitely doesn't help. The quick turnaround with the extra weight cut, that definitely doesn't help. And being real, this is a massive jump up in competition for Bobby Green. I mean, he just took out Nasrat Haqparast and Al Iaquinta, a guy, rolling off the couch, hanging the gloves up, and then a guy who still is, while we all think Nasrat's going to be kind of a big deal, he's not quite there yet. You know what I mean? Bobby showed his mettle against guys like Thiago Moises and Rafael Fiziev, though, where he fought very convincingly and nearly TKO'd Fiziev in the 3rd round of their fight. So there's some ups and downs. Bobby Green, one of these guys that fights to the level of his competition. Can he rise to the moment, James? What are you thinking on this fight?
I just can't pick Bobby Green here. I just can't. It would be a different story if we're talking about someone with, that one punch threat of knockout power. And you reference the Iaquinta fight, but that's really not the norm for Bobby Green. If you look typically in his career, his fights do go the distance. So that maybe helps your gas tank argument. But I just, like, to me, the only way I think you can beat an Islam is if you can match that wrestling. Like if you're a Gregor Gillespie, that type of fighter, or if you're like a one punch KO guy, like Fiziev, for example, someone like that can, knock out a Brad Riddell. Green does have knockout wins, but he's not typically known for that. So that's where I just don't see a path to victory for Bobby Green. The line is obviously crazy, but you're going to get that with any Islam fight. And I think the fact that, Green is taking such a huge step up, this isn't Nasrat or Al Iaquinta or, off a lengthy injury or anything along those lines. I just think it's too much of a step up here. And I really think I just see a similar fight to what we saw with Dan Hooker. Although I will say Bobby Green, I think, will hang in there a little bit longer just because you've seen he's very tough to finish. June 2016 was the last time he was finished in a fight, I believe, by Dustin Poirier. He's not a guy that's going to, be an easy out for anyone. And I get that Islam's got the, superior wrestling, superior grappling, superior ground game, but I don't think it'll be like a 1st round finish. People want to fantasize about that because we saw that in the Dan Hooker fight, but I think Bobby Green's a little too smart for that, and his ground game's a lot better too. So I think Islam will win. If you want to look for value plays in this, I think Islam by submission is probably your way to go. It's 5 rounds. I think you're going to get some better value there than whatever he is, minus 700, minus 1,000 right now. Bobby Green hasn't been submitted in a very long time, so you have to go like all the way back. I think I don't even have it handy as the last time he was submitted in a fight, but with it being 5 rounds, that definitely favors I think the chance of it ending within the 5 rounds, I think, is very likely. And I think Islam's going to be the guy to do it. But hey, look, there's always that power of, I got nothing to lose. Bobby Green has nothing to lose in this fight. Islam has everything to lose in this fight. If he loses this fight, he's lost that invincibility. I know he's lost before, but really, I mean, fans sort of forget about that loss to Martinez. But in general, you lose the 9-fight win streak. A win over Bobby Green doesn't do a ton, although I do think if he does win here, he gets the title shot regardless. I just think there's so much to lose here for Islam and not a ton to gain. Like, they could have maybe tried to rebook the fight or pulled Rafael dos Anjos out of the Fiziev fight and moved that Islam to fight him later on in a few weeks or something. But no, they went with Bobby Green. So credit to both guys for taking this fight. But like, Green has nothing to lose here, and there's always that worry of anything can happen in a fight. But I just don't know a path to victory for Bobby Green in this fight.
Yeah, I hear you there, James. I absolutely hear you there. And people call me crazy. I take these big underdog shots. I like to bet on the underdogs, especially when the numbers are crazy wide. Guys, I'm probably going to bet on Bobby Green. I mean, at 5-1, that's just a number that I personally can't turn down. I don't know that it's going to look like a good bet in hindsight. I did the same thing with Hooker, and it looked awful. He got taken down, tapped out immediately. And then in hindsight, you kind of look at it and you go, I think Hooker was just there for a paycheck. Like, I think Dan Hooker really kind of knew what was going on, and he took a couple of big swings early in round 1. And when it didn't happen, he was like, I don't think Bobby's doing that, though. I legitimately think Bobby's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder. He's looking for greatness. I think he's coming out here to make a big, big effort. And that attitude difference, I'm like, man, if I made the bet with Hooker, I probably got to go back to the well and try one more time with Bobby Green. 5-1 is just insane in a fist fight where anything can happen. And I think the pace of Bobby Green, a guy that we've seen tire people out with that get-up game before, we always talk about it. He's like a Diaz brother. 3 rounds is not enough for Bobby Green. He's always this close to killing the guy in round 3 because they just can't keep up with him. Well, now he's got a 5-round shot. Granted, it's one of the best guys in the world, probably the future champion. So maybe it's not overly likely that he gets it done late or outpaces him for rounds 3, 4, and 5. But this is kind of the moment we've all been looking for Bobby Green fans. So James, I agree with you. I think that, from a straight pick perspective, if you're saying who straight up wins this fight, I got to go with Makhachev, but I can see ways that Bobby Green could get it done. And I'm probably just going to throw a degenerate dart at that plus 500 for a betting purpose.
Not surprised. Seeing how some of the picks you've had and stuff, I get it. I mean, you look at the value, like I said, plus 500, very tempting. I can't even pull the trigger on that because I just think that even if it does go later, you're talking about Islam Makhachev, a guy who trains with Khabib Nurmagomedov. There, the pace has got to be there. The strength as well in that fight. I mean, you look at what Islam's able to do to his opponents. We'll see. Anything can happen in a fight, but I can't pull the trigger on this one. There's a dog or two I like on this card, but Bobby Green's not one of them.
Okay, I feel that. I do think there are some pretty good dogs on this card, actually, which I am sure we will get to. One thing I do want to mention, though, is later on when these totals come out, I know some people were talking about it in the chat a minute ago. Sorry, guys, I missed your names, so not going to go back and chase you down. But I think the overs actually have some value here because, like we talked about, Bobby Green, not a guy who's easy to submit. He hasn't been finished in years. I think the defensive grappling from him is going to be a big point in this fight. And if Islam Makhachev slices through Bobby Green like a knife through butter submission-wise, locks up a rear naked choke or something, that's going to be one of those you got me moments. You know what I mean? Like, okay, the kid is legit. He's just the best in the world, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. But for me, I think more enticing maybe than the Bobby Green bet is the over bet. Just say over 1.5, over 2.5. Say Bobby Green probably survives until the 3rd, the 4th, or potentially the 5th round, and go ahead and look for a chance to take it that way because I do think that a lot of what Bobby Green does, the way he jabs at the body of his opponent, he doesn't use a whole lot of kicks, the footwork, the movement, the circling, the get-up game, he does a lot that's going to make it tough for a wrestler to really style on him. And on top of that, he throws everything from the hip. He's always got his hands down. That's going to help him catching a wrestler coming in. That's going to help him with the takedown defense. So I think if nothing else, Bobby Green can at least extend this fight. And I think overs are probably a decent way to look.
Yeah, and you got to remember too, there's going to be a lot of fans of Islam that are not necessarily looking at the resume of Bobby Green. They don't see the fact that he's gone the distance a lot of times. They don't see the fact that the last guy to finish him is Poirier. And granted, again, I'm not naive to know the jump in competition here, but still, I think there's a lot. Like I've seen so many people say Islam first round. I don't know about that. I don't know if it's completely like a slam dunk that that's going to take place. So I think the over may be worth the stab there for sure.
Yeah, and I think another thing that people are maybe getting into is that good old recency bias. You know, he came out and ran through a guy like Hooker. People are perceiving Bobby Green to be a step down from a guy like Hooker.
Yeah.
So because of that, we're probably going to get some value on people thinking he's just going to slice straight on through Bobby, where I think he can at least last for a bit. So yeah, we'll see, man. This is going to be a fun main event. And honestly, the way Bobby Green fights, where you're biting on your nails at the end of the 3 rounds, hoping he won the decision, I hope we see exactly that. I hope this goes 5 rounds. I hope it's competitive. I hope he drags this kid into some deep waters and makes him wonder if he's going to win the fight or not. That would just be satisfying and fun. And as a lifelong Bobby Green fan, it's like when Cowboy Cerrone kind of made that run at the title a couple of years ago. I just want him to get his shot. Like, I would love for Bobby Green to get his shot, regardless win or lose, if he never has that belt wrapped around his waist. Like, I want him to at least say he got to fight for the title before it's all said and done.
Of course, yeah. Who doesn't love Bobby Green? I mean, other than Islam fans this weekend, but in general, he's a fan favorite. He's like a Diaz. I saw someone's tweet today. They're like, Bobby Green is what everyone wanted the Diaz brothers to be, you know. Basically. I thought that was kind of funny, but it's gonna be fun. I mean, Bobby Green, is trash talking the entire last fight. I love stuff like that, especially if you can back it up.
Heck yeah. This is going to be fun. This is going to be fun, James. All right. We got 182 live viewers here with us this Monday evening. I am joined by none other than James Lynch, the best interviewer in the business here on Pub Sports Radio, talking UFC Vegas 49. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. Please smash that like button for us. Share this thing if you've got social media. Let's pump those numbers up. I love it. We are moving on to the co-main event here. We've got Misha Cirkunov taking on Wellington Turman. And very interesting choice here, in my opinion, for the co-main event. I mean, granted, it should probably be a bit of a barn burner, but it's also probably going to be a bit of a sloppy barn burner, if I do say so myself. Misha Cirkunov looking like he's hanging out at that 185-pound mark. He dropped last fight. A lot of people had a lot of questions about how he was going to look. Was he going to be able to pull it off? And I'd say mixed results. At 34 years old, we thought maybe he would have a huge strength advantage, but it looks like he lost a lot of muscle mass making that drop to 185. So when he fought his opponent, Jotko, it just wasn't there. He didn't bully him around the cage. I had a bet on Misha Cirkunov, and I was thinking he was going to be able to just outmuscle Jotko the way that nobody at 185 really had before, because he was going to have that size, he was going to have that strength and have that power. And he failed on every single takedown until the 3rd round. Now, a lot of people question Misha Cirkunov's gas tank, and I know he was a bit low volume in that fight, but if you look at the stats, he attempted, I think, 15 takedowns in the first 2 rounds before he ended up finally catching a takedown in the 3rd round, and then continued to attempt another 5 in round 3, 4 of which I believe he got. So even though it looked like he was low volume, even though it looked like he was tired and gassing, the man tried to wrestle for 15 straight minutes against a young buck who has like an 80% takedown defense rating. So his cardio almost checks out a little bit in that last fight, even though it wasn't quite what we expected to see. He's one of these guys that is nasty dangerous on the mat. He's got a lot of first-round finishes, subbed a guy like Jimmy Crute out quickly and early. And he's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage here in this spot. I feel like this is a much more favorable matchup for Misha Cirkunov against a guy in Wellington Turman that everybody knows, James, I'm a straight hater. I do not believe in Wellington Turman. If you get TKO'd by Andrew Sanchez, you're on my do not bet list. I don't trust the kid's chin, even though he showed off, his shiny new chin that he inherited from Glover Teixeira in his last fight. I don't know how he survived some of the shots that he took. Granted, Sam Alvey was a little low volume in that spot, but the fact that he ate some of the punches that he did and kept coming forward, I got to kind of give, tip the cap just a little bit. Okay, Turman's not quite as chinny as I thought he was, but he also was not as impressive as a lot of people were expecting him to be in a guy fighting Sam Alvey, who has been released from the promotion, struggled with the takedowns, wasn't able to control him, really had to go for broke in that third round after having not one but 2 points taken from him for fouls in the fight. I mean, he's a black belt, is Turman on the ground, but I don't know if he's the level of Misha Cirkunov. He's also much smaller than Jotko is, and while Wellington Turman does have a 100% takedown defense rating per the UFC stats, James, he's only faced 4. He's the guy going for takedowns. Nobody's really ever tried to take Wellington Turman down. So 100% takedown defense rating on 4 total takedown attempts. I'm not super sold that that's a real takedown defense rating number. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this fight. I find it very interesting as far as the matchup goes.
Yeah, this, I mean, if I got to pick, I'm going to go Misha Cirkunov. You just look at the level of opposition that he's fought overall. I mean, the guys he's losing to for the most part are pretty solid. Even Jotko, I think he's sort of one of those underrated middleweights in the weight class. I had a chance to speak to Misha before this fight. You can find that on my UFC Vegas 49 playlist on my channel, youtube.com/LynchOnSports. I think I'm probably one of the only people who's got an interview with him lately. Misha and I go way back when he used to live in Toronto. And, the thing with Misha is that he's kind of one of the things he spoke about in the interview is just, having a better cut this time. Even though he's in Vegas, even though he has access to the PI, he spoke about the cut not being great. It seems like he's got that a bit more under control. So I agree with you. I think we'll still see the muscle, the strength loss in this fight, but at least the weight cut will go a little bit better. But he should win this fight, right? Like if you look at Wellington Turman, you mentioned it there, Andrew Sanchez, some of the other losses that he's had, it's like, this guy has just, proven time and time again that he can't get it done. But so is Misha Cirkunov. That's why I'm a little bit confused as to why this is the co-main event. I guess they think there's going to be a knockout or something like that. But it's not even like Wellington Turman's like a knockout artist or anything. I think that's, if he was fighting like someone in the division, like a Joaquin Buckley, for example, I would be a little bit more worried about Misha in this fight because there is that threat of the knockout, and he has been knocked out a ton of times. But he's fighting a guy that doesn't really have that threat. So I think Misha, with the height and reach, should be able to go along and win a decision. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but I like Misha here. But this is, from a betting perspective, I'm staying far away from this one just because of the inconsistency with Misha. That Jimmy Crute fight you mentioned, that was in Vancouver because I was at that card. That was, I think, the last Canadian event they've ever had for the UFC since the pandemic started. And I don't want to call it a fluke, but I'm going to call it a fluke. It was just a weird fight. Like, I think like Jimmy Crute fights, the Jimmy Crute we know of today fighting Misha Cirkunov, I think that could go very differently. I don't know if it was overconfidence or what happened, but I just think that's like one of the weird wins that he's had in his career. But outside of that, he's lost a lot of key fights. I knew he was going to get knocked out by Ryan Spann. It's just like, this is a guy that just, despite the move to Vegas a few years back, he's improved a bit, but not enough where you think that he's going to be a real threat here. So the pick's going to be Cirkunov, but I'm not betting this fight at all. I just think it's too inconsistent. Like, we could very well be talking about a Wellington Turman upset win on Monday just because Misha, for whatever reason, has time and time again not got it done.
I hear you, James. I absolutely hear you. I just think when you compare the levels of these guys' resumes, obviously Misha Cirkunov has a big edge in that area. And I'm not personally sold that Wellington Turman is UFC caliber. Working with a guy like Glover has got to be a boon. It's something that you're going to see improvements potentially. But you can't really fix chins. That's something that's always going to hang over his head, that he potentially could get knocked out at any point in time. And honestly, I went to the well with Misha Cirkunov. I pounded my chest. I said he was going to mess up Jotko. Jotko's mid-tier at everything at best. But the one thing he does well is that takedown defense, James. And that's all he needed to be able to take on Misha Cirkunov, was to be able to out-muscle him. I don't think Wellington Turman can out-muscle Misha Cirkunov. Yeah. I think that's the big key of this fight, is that it comes down to who's going to control those clinch and wrestling situations. And I'll bank on Misha Cirkunov here again in this spot. Turman is smaller than Jotko is. And I know, like I said, he's got that 100% takedown defense rating, but it's not believable for me yet at this point. So minus 125 on Misha Cirkunov, James. I know you said you're going to stay away from it. That's maybe the best choice. I think I kind of have to bet this. I haven't yet. Okay. I don't have a bet locked in, but if I'm going to bet Misha Cirkunov against Krzysztof Jotko, I don't really have an excuse not to bet him against a guy like Wellington Turman, someone who I think far less of than Krzysztof Jotko. And I might even get crazy, James, and take Misha Cirkunov by knockout. Not by KO, or not by submission like most people would expect, but by knockout. Now, granted, maybe inside the distance in this spot is a much better bet, a safer bet, but you're probably going to get a stupid number on the knockout because Cirkunov doesn't really knock people out. We're going to expect grappling. We're going to expect submissions from both guys. That's going to be where the bookies are laying their chalk, and I might try to pull one over on them and get a juicy number on a KO prop to fade that that Turman chin.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, you could see Misha maybe break through here if the weight cut goes well. Again, maybe this is because, he has fought pretty tough guys. If you look at the resume, Turman is probably the easiest opponent he's fought. I want to go say it since maybe his debut against Daniel Jolly, which was years ago. If you think about it, right? He's fought nothing but really tough guys. So I definitely could see it happening. I don't know. Every time I think Misha's going to do something great, it just blows up in my face. I remember the Volkan Ozdemir fight or the Glover fight. Those are fights where it's like, okay, come on, Misha. Yep. And then he ends up looking like an amateur out there. So yeah, I'll pick Cirkunov, but no bet for me in this one.
I am right there with you in that, James. I've been the guy kind of on the fence about Misha Cirkunov the whole way through, but I mean, Glover's got the belt around his waist. Like, that's not a bad loss in hindsight. And Volkan Ozdemir, he's a title challenger, he's a guy, and he's that guy with that power that I know he's kind of faded off a little bit here, but he was still a top contender for a while, and he still had some hands. So still, even looking bad against those fighters, that's far above the level of guys of a Wellington Turman. So yeah, I'm probably going to have to sack up and go for it. We'll see, though. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. We got 200 live viewers here on the show, and I need to give a special shout-out and thank you to our guy, Tajik Bey, the classic Tajik rolling donos of $4.99. Thank you very much to the GOAT for always supporting the UFC content creators around the net. Always looking to be there and help us all out. Thank you very much to Jijk. We appreciate the support, my friend. Next fight of the evening that we are going to talk about here. I got to wonder if they're going to switch this order up here, James, but I don't hate it.
I know Priscila, where you're going with this one. Yeah.
Yeah. Priscila Cachoeira taking on Ji-Yoon Kim, the Fire Fist herself. This fight is low-key going to be fun, James. Like, I'm going to be hard-pressed to name more women's fighters that are bangers than these two. Like, Priscila Cachoeira coming off that embarrassing loss to Jillian Robertson. We know her weakness is the grappling. We know her weakness is the ground game. She's not overly technical, but she trains out of Team Figueiredo for a reason. She hits like Davison Figueiredo does. Like, this woman swings for the fences, has 10 KOs on her record. She bloodies people up with one or two punches. Rare power from Priscila Cachoeira at this weight class for the women's division. If she could rein it in just ever so slightly and get some technique behind those punches, she might legitimately be a problem. Ji-Yoon Kim on the flip side of this thing, 9-4-2, big power too. She's another hitter, and she's got these long, long arms. She's going to have a ridiculous 7-inch reach advantage here in this spot. But it's almost like Sabina Mazo, James, where she ends up being a little slow because she can fire, but she has a hard time reloading, getting those arms back for defense, getting those back to protect her face. That's a bit of an issue for her because of that length. And we've seen fighters like Molly McCann be able to dip and throw and just get inside on her and land big, big bombs. Ji-Yoon Kim has proven to be tough and durable throughout this run, though, and she hasn't been knocked out ever, even though she's taken some big shots. My only concern here is that I think Priscila Cachoeira hits harder than anybody she has faced before. Yeah. This is a weird spot where we have an underdog that, believe it or not, is slightly enticing to me. Minus 165 on the betting line for Ji-Yoon Kim. I think she's deservingly the favorite here in this spot. She's fought better competition, stand-up competition anyway. And Priscila Cachoeira is plus 145, plus 150. And I really think that Priscila Cachoeira stands a chance of rocking Ji-Yoon Kim multiple times with big shots and potentially giving her first knockout loss if she can close the distance the right way and pound on her. What do you think about this one, James?
Yeah, that was one angle I was thinking about for this fight as well. The thing with Kim is like you look at her wins, they've aged very poorly here, right? Like she's beat Nadia Kassem, who's not in the UFC. Melinda Fabian's not in the UFC. Justin Kitch not in the UFC. Her losses are against McCann and Grasso. I mean, Grasso's really good, right? I mean, we're talking about her almost fighting for a title here pretty soon. And then you look at Cachoeira, like I said, the power's there, but then, some bad fight IQ, like the Robertson fight, like we saw, right? So that's a bit concerning here. The way I'm going to do this one is kind of like the co-main event. I think this is actually a fight I'm staying away from. Again, even from a betting perspective, I think if you were to bet, maybe I would go on the Cachoeira side, like you're saying, because maybe she can go out there and get the knockout or get it done. But Kim's got I believe she has a height and reach advantage in this fight. So that's where I'm kind of like, can she keep her at bay? Can she make it so, Cachoeira can't get on the inside? this is another fight where I don't know why this is on the main card. I think there's better options here. I know you're a little bit more amped up than I am about it, but I just this is another one where there's just a lot of inconsistency here with the fights, right? Like in terms of what they've been able to do here. So I'm actually siding with the odds here. I will pick Kim to get it done, maybe by a decision. Nothing super exciting here. But like you mentioned, Cachoeira, maybe throw the knockout prop in there. I don't know. That could be an option, but this is another fight where I'm going to kind of stay away from. Don't worry, there's other fights that I definitely have a better read on, but this was one where it's like you look at the performances, it's like, what are we getting here? Sometimes like you don't know, right? So that's kind of how I feel about this one. So the pick's going to be Kim, but maybe you throw the knockout prop there on Cachoeira or just take her as a dog straight up.
No, I completely agree, James. This is a fight that is very, very hard to really gauge because both these women have had their struggles, and we know that both of them have major glaring holes. I kind of side with my guy Blake A here in the chat, though. Jinh Kim's only UFC win was Nadia Kassim, one that I actually backed her in a big way on, knowing how bad Kassim was. But he's saying she was never UFC caliber, and I can kind of feel that argument. I don't know that she is UFC caliber. She seems almost like another one of these big power punchers that's going to carry her. She'll be able to take out some low and mid-tier competition just because of her size, just because of how hard she hits. And at a certain point, she's going to cap out. I think Priscila Cachoeira is live in this spot. We got Gaming Wolf hitting me with the 1-800-GAMBLER. And I got a treat for y'all because now we can officially call the orderlies when somebody makes a bet that you don't like. So everybody keep an eye out for the orderlies. Anytime there's a bet that you think should be 1-800-GAMBLER, here you go. I made this bad boy myself. Shout out to Brady and DFS for being my orderlies here. They're always the ones that are using that phrase, so hope they appreciate the the step up here. Everybody make sure to get that one going every time someone makes a bet you think is questionable. But yeah, James, I'm very tempted on this plus 150. I do think that Priscila Cachoeira is the type of fighter that can get inside that range. And if she lands, she's been busting ladies up already in this division. And we know that if nothing else, Priscila Cachoeira's got heart. She's not going to go down easy. And Jinh Kim, not much of a grappler herself. I know that she's got a few submissions on her record. We need to at least make mention of those, because if she gets on the back, there's a potential Jinh Kim maybe wins this thing by rear naked choke. That's on the table. But if she doesn't go to that grappling, and if she doesn't go to that grappling often, this turns into a slugfest, and I think I'll take Cachoeira in that type of a fight anytime.
Absolutely. Sorry, I got my kid in here. Hey,
you're good.
Can you go?
It's a good time for us to hear a word from our sponsors anyway. So shout out here. Let me cue this up here. Perfect. Welcome back, everybody, to the Die Hard MMA podcast here on Pub Sports Radio. Me and James talking UFC Vegas 49, and we got another Tajik Bey sighting with the big hammer dono, $49.99, and following that up immediately with a $19.99. Tajik going nuts in the chat today. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you and all the love and support. We always do, my man. Nothing but the best. Next fight that we want to talk about here is Arman Tsarukyan taking on Joel Alvarez. And this probably should be the co-main event. No, James?
100%. Why is it not the co-main event? They might be a little bit worried that Joel will miss weight again, and maybe that kind of taints it a bit. That's my only guess, but this should absolutely be the co-main event.
I don't get it. This one has all the makings of a co-main event spot. Arman Tsarukyan, a guy who has, besides his UFC debut, really just gone on a tear. He's been nothing but impressive ever since. He is always the biggest favorite on the card whenever he fights. And then you've got a guy like Joel Alvarez coming in, making a big splash last fight against Islam Makhachev, really announcing himself to the division. There's some legitimate upside to both of these guys, and I think this is going to be an absolute banger. I don't see why it's not the co-main event. Maybe they're worried, like you said, about the weight miss. Maybe they're worried a little bit about the grappling heavy approach to it, whereas the other two fights are probably going to be mostly striking matches, maybe more of a finish upside. I don't know. But what we got to know about Arman Tsarukyan here, he's got kind of a karate style striking, that wide base, very measured approach on his feet. He's got an active jab, and he's got a powerful lead left hook. He uses that thing really well, but more than that, he's a relentless grappler. He goes to that body lock, vicious ground and pound. He's good in scrambles. Every once in a while, he gives up a bad position, but he's just so relentless. He doesn't stop. Even if he loses one scramble, he transitions to the next spot and then immediately puts you on the defense again. So it's hard to really knock him for getting beat every once in a while in a scramble because it doesn't stick. Now, he got rocked bad in his fight by Matt Frevola early in round one, and that was something that I noticed very, very clearly. He's got a couple of chinks in the armor, if you will, even though he's 17-2. He's been hurt a couple times. He's always cheating, James. He is always grabbing the fence. He is always sticking his fingers in gloves. I mean, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. But he absolutely gets the maximum 2 warnings like every single fight. His opponent, Joel Alvarez, everybody knows this guy missed weight last time he came in. He's absolutely massive for this weight class. No idea how he makes 185. And if you will, he's huge. He's got the I like to use the Trump gif where he goes huge every time I'm talking about Joel Alvarez. But he's got mostly a kicking attack. We saw a big improvement from him in his last fight. Usually, you run the tape on this kid, he likes to walk backwards. He likes to walk, kind of keep that distance and kick away at his opponents and doesn't really engage all that much until maybe he catches you with a flying knee or something. He'll accept bottom position. If you want to take him down, he'll go to his back. Last fight, he came out and he walked Thiago Moises down. He showed off some hands. He showed off some elbows. His knees were much sharper. His teep kick to the body was something extremely impressive. Like, it was a total different Joel Alvarez the last time out. Now, maybe that performance was an outlier, but when you get these young, high-caliber kids and they take a long break, you see them jump levels. And I think this is more of the Joel Alvarez we can expect going forward. I don't really expect him to revert to the old version of himself. But one thing I keep hearing is the wrestling. He'll accept bottom position. He'll go to his back. His opponent will be able to get these takedowns on him. And while that might be true, something in jiu-jitsu, if you people have not trained or worked jiu-jitsu or anything like that, a lot of the sweeps that this guy goes for, they work because of that size and strength advantage. And his opponent here, Arman Tsarukyan, is not used to being at a strength disadvantage in these spots. There are times where you're beat by a much better, much more technical person, but you can still shift them up and off you if you just have more power than they do. And I think Joel Alvarez is going to be able to get back to his feet and get out from under someone like Arman Tsarukyan if he wants to, just because he's a size bully in this spot. It might be a trap, James, but I'm falling for it. I got plus 220 on the underdog here, Joel Alvarez. I think that at this line, it might be the last time we see it. If he comes out here and he beats Arman Tsarukyan and he really gets up to be one of these top contender kids, he's never going to be over plus 200 ever again. And I've seen Arman Tsarukyan hurt. The power that Joel Alvarez showed off, both in his hands and his legs last time out, I think he's liable for the knockout here. If this hits the ground, I know he's got a chance at the submission. And if he gets some big power shots off on the feet, there's no saying he can't win minutes if Arman Tsarukyan isn't able to do anything impressively with his takedown or blanket control up against the cage. Those close rounds, sometimes we see those go to the strikers because they're the ones actually landing some form of damage. So I'm siding with the dog here. I did make a bet at plus 220 here, James. How do you like this fight?
I'm going the same way. I like Joel Alvarez in this fight. First off, let me just point out that for whatever reason, the line, I noticed on certain books it's not showing up, but we do have Armen at about almost a 3-1 favorite. I think it's like minus 250 on some lines as well. That's too high in my opinion. It should be much closer. In my opinion, this is almost a pick'em fight is the way I see it. Now, a couple things. Did interview Armen before this fight. One of the key things was he didn't get to go to the U.S. to train this time around at American Top Team. Some visa issues, some other stuff. So he was mainly back home training. With this camp back home. So I think it's a bit of a negative actually, because you go to American Top Team, you got the high caliber training partners you get to work with all the time. So there's that side of it. And the other side of it as well is I spoke to Thiago Moises after losing to Joel Alvarez because I wanted to get his thoughts on what was supposed to be Islam Makhachev and Beneil Dariush because he fought both opponents. And I asked him about the Alvarez fight and I said, what about him missing weight? How did that impact the fight? He said this guy was so strong in the cage. He's never felt anything like it. I don't be surprised if Alvarez again misses weight. Let's not forget he's missed weight 2 times in a row. I'm actually surprised the UFC gave him another fight at lightweight because typically when you miss twice, they boot you up a weight class. But I guess they see something here. They're making this fight happen. That's exactly it. The ground advantage and also the power and the fact that this is such a close fight. The fact that you're, like you said, you're getting Joel Alvarez at almost plus 200. I have to take that because to me, it's more about the fact that there's so much value here in that play at plus 200 because the line's so off. Now, look, if this is a pick'em fight and I'm betting this fight or whatever, I'm picking it, I'm still probably going to pick Joel Alvarez, but this is even more enticing to take because the money's so good on Joel at this point here. So, and the other thing is Joel obviously very big for the weight class. So I think Arman's going to struggle with that a little bit, trying to get on the inside, trying to do what he's used to. Look, Arman's been pretty durable throughout his career. He might not get knocked out here. He might end up winning a decision, but I have to take Joel Alvarez with the price you're getting him at. Cause like you said, I don't know if we'll get him at that money again. So I'm definitely taking advantage of that.
I'm glad we're on the same side here, James. I really am. And like I said, this might just be a trap. Every single one of us might be lining up here on this dog, and maybe Arman Tsarukyan does what he does and blankets him for 15 minutes and just keeps on rolling. But this is a bet I gotta make, man. I absolutely cannot pass up on that plus 220. I should have been on this kid against Thiago Moises. I've been cheering on Joel Alvarez and singing the praises of this kid for a long time, but that long layoff kind of scared me. The weight miss kind of scared me. So I stayed off of it last time and kind of kicking myself for that. Hopefully I'm not stepping right into it here one fight too late, but I think he's legit. I could also see him being an Anthony Rumble Johnson type where he fights at 185 in a couple years because he is so big.
He is really big. Yeah.
His days at 155, I'm pretty sure, are numbered, James. And he could be one of these guys that once his body gets a taste of that next weight class up, he might just never go back down. Because if he moves up to 170, learns how to fill up, put some muscle on, we could see him inflate even further from there because he's just massive. So hopefully that size advantage is going to get us at least one more win here at this juicy plus number.
Yeah, no, I agree. 6'3", that's just unheard of for lightweight. I mean, you like you said, there's middleweights that are 6'3". There's even light heavyweights, I think, that are smaller than that. It's crazy to just think how tall he is. So we'll see. But yeah, like I said, close fight on paper, but you're getting plus 200 for Joel Alvarez. You got to take that.
I want to see Joel Alvarez stand next to William Knight.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, he'll be taller.
Next fight up, Gregory Rodrigues, RoboCop, taking on Armen Petrosyan, and I'm sure I butchered that last name, so I apologize to you, Armen. This is a very, very interesting face-off of Dana White's Contender Series alumni here, James. Gregory Rodrigues, 11-3. He's been a monster since he came into the UFC. I mean, this is a guy that I really thought nothing of because he had, kind of a questionable KO loss on his record to Jordan Williams, a guy that I didn't think much of. And he has done nothing but turn it around and become a monster ever since then. We know his ground game is super high level and slick, but we kind of forget about his grappling because his last couple fights, he's gone out there and stood and banged with his opponents. And he KO'd the Iron Turtle in his last fight, James, something that I didn't think was humanly possible. He went out there and took Jeong Park's head right off. I do have a bit of a question mark on that one, though, because it looked to me, now I don't know if this ever got confirmed, but it looked to me like Park had a staph infection. He had a big welt spot on his chest that looks a lot like it does when you get a staph infection. And we know that really weakens people a whole lot. You got to wonder if he was able to do his cardio. You got to wonder if his durability was compromised. That's just me. So I don't know if that can, that's not something that I can actually prove, but I have questions. One thing I've noticed about Gregory Rodrigues, though, he gets wobbled, James. I mean, similar to Joel Alvarez, he is huge for the division. He cuts a lot of weight to get down here. He's got this massive body, solid muscle on him, but he is incredibly hittable. He loads up on these big power right hands. He throws from the hips, and people are able to counter him. Now he's filthy in scrambles. When you get this guy on the mat, he knows how to ride that back position. He's a human backpack. He stays one move ahead of you, gets on top positions, and he is deadly with his submission game as well. He's a finisher. 5 wins by knockout, 4 by sub, only 2 decision wins, and then 2 knockout losses and 1 decision loss. So this guy is definitely staying inside the distance more often than not. He's got a 4-inch reach advantage over Petrosyan. And Petrosyan is one of these fighters that you all know I try to stay on the other side of. 6-1 coming in here, UFC debut off of the Contender Series, all 6 wins by knockout, the 1 loss by knockout, but he's training over at ATT. You know, they made a point on the Contender Series of really digging into how this guy went out to Russia to learn how to wrestle, because he was always getting taken down by his opponents. And boy, did he show off a very solid get-up game in his Contender Series fight. And once he's on the feet, he is explosive. Crazy kicks, fast hands, big power clinch knees. This guy is deadly on the feet with his striking, and he's hard to take down and even harder to keep down. This is going to be a violent fight, James. I can't wait for this one, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it. What we've got is Gregory Rodrigues currently sitting at about a -160 favorite spot. -170s are out there. He opened up at about -180 or -200, so love coming in on the dog. You can get Armen at about +135, +140 at about this time. What do you think, James? What are you doing here?
This is another tricky one. I think Rodrigues did turn a corner in that last fight. That was a really impressive win. I know you kind of talked about the knockout there a little bit, but I don't know. It seems like he's found his stride. And one other win that he has, I just wanted to quickly point out. He beat Josh Friend, who, if you remember, won on the Looking for a Fight show, which got the UFC contract. He trains at a Factory X. He's a training partner of Dustin Jacoby. So just, wanted to mention that as another sort of good win that he has on the resume. Dustin Todorovic is a good win too. I don't know. I think this is Rodrigues' fight to lose. I think you mentioned the ground game's good. Stand-up's been evolving a little bit. With Petrosyan, I'm a little bit worried because didn't we kind of see this last week with Nicholas Mata and Jim Miller, where you got a guy making his debut and he looked great on Contender Series, but once you get to the UFC, it's a much different animal here. Now, Rodrigues obviously doesn't have the amount of fights that Jim Miller does or the amount of experience, although I do think he has fought better opposition, but I don't know. I think there's too many unknowns about Petrosyan in this fight. Like, he had a great knockout, but we know that Dana White, especially this last season of Contender Series, if you get any type of impressive win, he's going to sign you, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're UFC caliber. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like he was very willing to give out contracts for like the flashiest fight, but maybe not necessarily the best fighter. And I think this is kind of a case of it here. Petrosyan, he's got 7 fights, good for him. The win was good. He beat a guy who was 10-0 at the time. But outside of that, the fight before that, he beat a guy who was making his pro debut. He finished him in 15 seconds. Like, that doesn't tell us anything. So from my perspective, I think Rodrigues probably wins this fight. I think you could bet it if you want to. I'm kind of banking on the fact that this guy has really found some momentum since losing to Jordan Williams. We'll just chalk it up as that Jordan Williams loss is kind of like Stefan Struve beating Stipe, right? Like, didn't really mean much later on in his career, but it was a loss that happened. We have to talk about it. I think Rodrigues is the real deal. I think he's turning a corner here. Like I said, I think he gets it done. The question is, does he finish? I think it's possible. I think we'd see another knockout here. We'll see.
Okay. I don't mind it, James. I really don't. I'm going to be on the other side of you on this one. I did lock in a 2-unit play on Armen Petrosyan, and like you mentioned, the spot last week with Jim Miller, that's the Dana White Contender Series fade, James. That's my favorite move of all time. They bring in these overhyped prospects and they lose to UFC vets. We've seen it time and time again. But the key on that, James, is you got to be laying chalk. You don't lay chalk on the Dana White Contender Series guys that are rolling over here, and the bookmakers, for whatever reason, think they deserve to be favored over true blue, proven UFC fighters. In this spot, you're getting the Dana White Contender Series kid as a dog, and I think that's the right move. He's scrappy. He's got faster hands, and that speed advantage, I think, is going to be really what ices this fight. I think Armen will be able to stay safe enough on the ground, be able to use that get-up game, get back up to his feet, and then once they're standing, I mean, Rodrigues can kill anybody on the feet. We've seen that. I just think that Armen Petrosyan is a much better boxer, and I think his hands are faster, and I think that that'll make the difference. We've seen Gregory Rodrigues KO'd once, rocked and wobbled a couple times by guys that are not super knockout threats, And I think someone like Arman will be able to clip him and put him down. So it's maybe a little bit of a KO or bust spot, but we'll see what happens. Maybe my absolute new favorite listener on the show, I Love Clinty Baby, says, inside the distance is the play here. Very nice parlay piece. Easy money, Clinty Baby. I Love Clinty Baby. I agree with your assessment. I do think violence is the way to go in this spot. I want to see what those numbers look like when they come out, because I don't expect this fight to last much more than an round and a half. I'd probably take the under on the 1.5. What do you think there, James?
Possible, although last week I got scared. I had the under. I had the fight doesn't go the decision in Al Hassan and Buckley, and that didn't happen. So now I'm kind of like, I don't know if I should go that route. We'll see. It happens. Even Olberg and Charant, same thing. I thought that was going to end in a finish. Didn't happen. So I've been kind of bit here. I'm just, this is a personal just opinion of mine. I'm just staying away from that for now, at least for the next little bit. We'll see. But I mean, on paper, it should end in a finish, right?
Yeah. No, I can completely understand. I got burned last week myself. I had the under 2.5 with the Chad Ellinger fight, and of course he knocks him out in the last minute or so of the fight. So it doesn't go the distance hit. Under 2.5 did not. So you got to be careful with those totals. But I definitely think violence is probably key here in this spot. We've got 233 live viewers. Thank you all so much. That's a big number. We appreciate you joining us here to watch the show. Smash that like button, and I would love to see that 300 viewer mark at some point. So let's try and get the word out if we can. That'd be freaking sweet. Next up, we've got Ignacio Bahamondes taking on Rong in a fight that I am so mad. Why they got to do this to me? I simply don't understand. These guys don't need to fight each other this soon. These are two massive prospects, extremely skilled, talented young men, and the UFC does not need to pit the 21-year-old against the 24-year-old. There's other fighters that they can head in there against. I love both these guys. They're both bet-on fighters for me. They're guys I've pinned that I want to look for opportunities to back them, and I hate that the UFC has put them up against one another here in this spot. It's just too soon, in my opinion. We've got an interesting spot, though, where Ignacio Bahamondes is a big favorite. He opened up about minus 275, and now he's sitting down as low as minus 220. There's a lot of love coming in on the underdog Rong. Plus 215 opener. He's about plus 180 at this point. There's a lot of people lining up to back this kid, and I can understand why. He's got a massive amount of experience for his age. He is 18-4 at just 21 years old. He likes to walk his opponents down. He's got hard body kicks, but he's a bit low volume. He's a sniper with that right hand, got some serious power in that thing, and he's a solid, strong grappler. Decent wrestling, rides the body lock of his opponent, gets on top of people, does real well from that position. But in his UFC debut, he dropped it to Vargas, and he really seemed to struggle with the volume of his opponent kind of coming back at him. In his last fight, really showed off what he can do. 86 significant strikes with 6 takedowns and a third-round finish. Just kind of a master performance from Rong in his last fight. But he was taking on an opponent who was stepping up on short notice and not particularly UFC caliber at that time. So we got to question how much we can really dig into that. That's the kind of opponent a talented kid like this is supposed to smash. Here, though, Ignacio Bahamondes training out of Valley Flow with guys like Bilal Muhammad. I mean, tall and long, super slick striking. He is really light on his feet, switches stances. He likes to pressure forward and attack that low calf. He's got good head movement, nice pull counters. And then he mixes in kicks to the body and kicks to the head. He's got good, strong hips. He likes to attack the body of his opponents, and he himself is very durable. We've seen him take some big shots, 100% takedown defense, and a 4-inch reach advantage. James, do you agree with the money coming in here on the dog, or are you siding with the favorite on this one?
I'm going with the favorite in this one. This is another kind of tricky fight that could surprise us here. Rong is so young that it's like, maybe this is a fight where he breaks through here and gets it done. He did fight Brandon Jenkins in his last fight, who I want to say that was, I don't know if it was short notice, but I think it was one of those fights that was kind of put together kind of late. Jenkins has obviously got a lot of experience in the regional scene, but you look at Bahamondes, I think last fight was his coming out party, one of his coming out parties, because the Roosevelt Roberts knockout, just spectacular. Had the close fight with McDessie prior to that. Has one over Chris Brown, who's actually a training partner of Holly Holmes at Jackson Wink. That was a pretty good victory there. I mean, this is, again, two prospects. They're trying to, they do this every now and then. They'll put sort of, we had Miranda Maverick and Macy Barber last year, same thing, where they want to just see who the better prospect is at this stage in their career. I tend to lean more towards the favorite here just because of the experience and who he's fought. That's, I sort of look for intangibles there. I also want to say that, actually, let me just double check here. I think, he's also a pretty big guy for the weight class here. Bahamondes is 6'3" with a 75.5 inch reach. His opponent's 5'9" with a 71 inch reach. That's enough for me to pick him here. Again, we could see something different here from Rong in this fight because he's so young, but I'm going to go Bahamondes to get it done in this fight. Question is, does he finish? I think it's possible.
I'm right there with you, James. I think Ignacio Bahamondes really is the better fighter at this point. I think he's more proven at this point. I like Rong. I really do. I think this kid's got a bright future. I think the UFC has a solid star and potential prospect on their hands. But I keep coming back to that issue against Vargas with that volume. Somebody like Bahamondes is going to be able to match that performance, constantly moving forward, constantly throwing varied attacks into his opponent's face. I just don't know if Rong is ready for that type of offense constantly coming at him, and the way that he varies it up constantly, mixing in shots to the legs, the body, the head. I just don't know if Rong's going to have an answer. Now, maybe Rong can get this thing to the ground and mix in some wrestling, and that'll be the difference. But I don't know that he's going to be able to hold someone like Bahamondes down. The reach advantage, I think, is a significant issue. Someone like Rong is not used to being on the wrong side of the reach advantage, and we got to wonder how a young kid like that is going to be able to deal with that. Young fighters drop fights, folks. They make mistakes, and it doesn't mean that they're done or buried or they're never going to be good. He's just 21. If he's ever going to drop a spot, it's spots like this where he's fighting someone who's just a little more polished than he is. I don't have a bet on it at this point, James. I'm a little scared to step in front of Rong, if I'm being honest. But the other thing is all the love is coming in on Rong. So maybe we get a better line a little later in the week. I'm going to be patient. I'm going to see where this thing settles. I don't know if I want to necessarily parlay Bahamondes. I'm not against it, but maybe I can get a straight bet on him if we get down in the minus 170, minus 180 range. I don't know if it'll fall that far, but let's see what happens.
Yeah. No, interesting fight for sure. Future of the division, right? So
I love it. I love seeing where these kids are going to end up. And you know what? As much as I hated on it earlier, you're right. That spot where they threw the ladies together to see who was the real prospect, they got to do that sometimes. I think it's a little early for Zoo considering he's 21, but I can respect it. It'll be fun to see which one needs a little bit more time and who's really going to take the next step in their career.
Another male example, Mike Trizano and Grant Dawson a couple years ago at featherweight when Grant was fighting there. So same thing. Trizano had won the Ultimate Fighter. Grant Dawson had won a Contender Series. It's like, who's better? And, Trizano, I know, he's done okay, but Grant, I think you've seen has been, a little bit more solid, but that's what they like doing. So there we go.
I don't mind it. You can't always have the young kids beating up the old guys.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Shout out here, MMA Asphalt. We really appreciate the donation. I am glad that you like the show and glad that you love Ignacio. I'm glad that we're kind of on the same page there. That is pretty awesome. Next fight up that we want to talk about here. Apparently, I somehow screwed this up, and there it goes. I don't know what's going on with my PC. Sorry about that, folks. Josiane Nunes taking on Ramona Pascual. I'm not sure how to pronounce that.
James, it's Pascual. Yeah, I've interviewed her before. Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure I'm saying that right because my brain says Pascal, but the UA really was throwing me off there. Josiane Nunes, James, she's my favorite new Nunes. I mean, the power that this girl brings to the table. I was one of the very few that was on her and on her with confidence. Her last fight where she absolutely. Well, I mean, short of a better term here, murdered the girl. I feel a little bit bad for what's been going on in the news with Bea Malecki. After that fight, she's been having the concussion issues and stuff like that. I hate to, I feel bad for fighters when they end up in that situation. But I called Josiane Nunes landing the knockout in that spot. The way she throws that overhand, the way that she just walks into her opponent, she likes to attack the leg kicks, works her way inside, and then just goes to work swinging heavy. She's really fun to watch. Not necessarily the most cerebral approach to a fight, but she gets it done, and she hits hard. Her opponent, though, James, I'm just not that impressed with Pascal, if I'm being completely honest. You look at her record, she's 6-2. She is training out of Syndicate MMA, which we all know is a hot spot, great gym at this spot, but she keeps her hands low. She throws a lot of kicks. She's got a good body lock, good trip takedowns, and she's coming off a big TKO win that got her up to the big show. But you look at who she fought. The girl
2-0.
was stepping in on short notice, 2-0, up essentially 2 weight classes to take on this absolute monster. And when I looked in a little bit deeper, I was just kind of having fun digging in on this one. The girl she faced had like a 5-4 amateur record, where it's like, that is just not an impressive win in hindsight. You think about it, she absolutely should have dominated that spot. But the clinch knees were impressive. She's obviously got some athleticism. She's got some power. I've got a feeling she's going to get hurt here, though, James. I think Josiane Nunes is just too much for this girl to handle. And unless she can desperately get these takedowns, unless she can ground Nunes, which I don't know if we have proof that she can pull it off, I think Nunes is going to pop her up on the feet. And I think she's going to be more than worth the minus 220 price tag she's at. There's a little bit of love coming in on Ramon Pascual. But one thing I want to point out is every once in a while in sports betting, you see these line moves. And I know everybody knows our guy Gianni. I'm working on trying to get him back on the show, everybody. I promise we're going to make it work. He's tied up with the UFC right now. But he always talks about like the betting syndicates and stuff like that, James. And it's rare we see line movement manipulation in the UFC the way you would in maybe some of the other major sports. But when this line opened up, they had Josiane Nunes as the minus 175 favorite. The initial book had this thing hammered all the way down to a pick 'em. So we know when the lines first come out, super low limits, respectable bettors can move those lines with very small amounts of money and absolutely get adjusted lines. Well, then as soon as the limits open up, they fire the other way. Now she's sitting at minus 220. So after opening minus 175, the early books moved her to pick 'em and in a drastic move. And then it's been nothing but Nunes money the other way until she's a much bigger favorite, minus 220. That's the kind of line movement that I look at and go, the smart people wanted big money on Nunes. Maybe that's my tinfoil hat talking, James.
Yeah.
But I want to hear your thoughts on this fight.
No, you're spot on. You're absolutely spot on. A couple other like kind of things that I think led to her getting signed. So Ramona's with Paradigm, which is one of the big management groups. Conor McGregor's rep by them as well. I'm sure they had a hand in getting her the shot, aside from the fact as well that she also trains at Syndicate. So it's right there in Vegas. It's an easy pickup there. But you mentioned it there. She does not have a single, other than Shamir, who she fought in her last fight, who, by the way, was a short notice fight. Remember, she was supposed to fight Courtney King on that card. King's out. Shamir comes in. She's only got 2 fights. Prior to that, she beat a girl making her pro debut. Prior to that, she beat a girl who was 4-5. The only fighter that she has a winning record against is her last opponent. Other than that, it's all been losing records. And the one opponent she had with a win, she got armbarred in the 3rd round. She also fought Janae Harding, who's in Bellator, who's actually pretty decent, but not someone that's, I think, in title contention in that promotion by any means here. But yeah, there's very few women that hit as hard as Nunes does. I like her by knockout. I'm definitely going to take that prop if you want even better value on it as well. But I think this is going to be very similar to the Bia fight in the sense as well that Ramona is going to be a lot taller, right? Ramona is, I think, 5 foot. What is she here? 5'7". Nunes is 5'2". Same thing. It's just going to be punching that big target and getting the knockout. I think we're going to see something very similar to that. Now, look, I know Syndicate MMA is a great camp. There's a lot of women there. Obviously, she's not training with slackers. She's got really good training partners. But there's not enough proof for me to feel that she's going to go out here and pull off the upset here. And I just think this is Nunes' fight to lose. I just don't see it happening. I think she goes out there and knocks her out.
I completely agree. And you know what? It's a spot where I'm weirdly confident on. And I say that every once in a while where maybe I shouldn't be this excited about it. And, shout out again to Wheezy and DFS. They're going to call the orderlies on me for this one because they said nobody should be confident betting this fight. But I'm with you, James. I don't see how Nunes really struggles in this spot unless, again, we're talking about the grappling. And even then, her being lower to the ground, she has got running back thighs. Like, it's going to be tough for the bigger woman to get underneath her and then get past that tank of a lower body to be able to take her to the ground and then smother her there. So, yeah, I think we're going Nunes. And I'm tempted to either parlay her or even just pull out the hammer and lay a big bet on that minus 225.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you there on the same page, 100%.
All right. I love to hear that. Next fight up, we've got Terrance T-Rex McKinney taking on Faraz Ziam. Now, this is a rebooked fight, James. This is one that everybody's talked about for a little while. Seems like a matchup the UFC kind of wants to keep together the way they rescheduled it here. Another kind of see who's the real contender spot. Terrance McKinney, a kid that, as we know, does not like to get paid by the hour. comes in and wrecks people in that first round absolutely dominantly. He's got good solid grappling. He's got explosive power in his hands. He's athletic. He's fast. He's tall. He's long. I mean, he seems like the full package deal. Now, his opponent, Ziam, he's a bit more of a point fighter. You know, people don't tend to like Ziam. I actually tried to bet against him a couple of times, and I'm starting to realize he's a lot better than I gave him credit for. He's kind of I'm going to use John Fitch as an example, but it's more striking than grappling because he just avoids his opponents and he takes away their offense. He's so good at controlling the range. He's hard to hit. And then he suckers you into spots where he can either counterpunch you and hit you and hurt you badly enough to turn kickboxers into wrestlers, or he level changes on you and actually mixes in the wrestling himself. Very high-level fight IQ game plans from Ziam, and it's gotten to the point where I can't really hate on him anymore. I kind of want to back him. So last time this fight was booked, James, I don't want to spend too much time breaking it down because we've all talked about it already several times. Ziam, minus 125 favorite. Comeback is on Terrance McKinney at plus 105, plus 110. And I was on Ziam last time. I have not reloaded that bet just yet. But that's the side that I kind of am leaning to, simply because I do think that Terrance McKinney is a bit of a first round or bust fighter. I know his grappling is solid. We saw in the Contender Series, his wrestling is very good, but he gassed out and gave up a finish after he wasn't able to put his opponent away in the second round there. Crazy flying knee TKO that is going to be on Woodson's highlight reel basically forever. But if he can't touch a guy like Faraz, he's going to have a hard time landing that power. And if Ziam is constantly, skipping and moving and staying away, he's also going to have a hard time chasing those takedowns. Ziam is going to have a 2-inch reach advantage here in this spot. And we've seen Terrance McKinney hurt a bunch of times, James. I think his chin is a bit more of a liability than people are giving on. And I also think there's a lot of pressure on him because since this fight got canceled and rebooked, there have been nothing but promos about how incredible this kid is, putting out all those round one numbers, the fact that he's got finishes in under 2 minutes and, marking the time codes for every single finish that he's ever had in the last 5-10 fights. Like, I think there's a lot of pressure right now on Terrance McKinney, and he's a young kid. I wonder if he can rise to the occasion. If he doesn't get Ziam out of there in round one, I kind of feel like Ziam takes over.
Yeah. I'm on the Ziam fight side as well. Quickly, Will mentioned, did interview Terrance before this fight. Again, you can find that on my UFC Vegas 49 playlist on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/SunshineSports. But one thing we didn't even really talk about is that, McKinney, like, he gets this record-setting highlight reel finish, and he hasn't fought since then. And it's not his fault. Like you said, the last fight, it got pushed back. But I feel like he's kind of been riding that as long as he can. And I think people forget that, he did lose on Contender Series. He's also I should mention he's not a kid. He's 27, but again, like he's the older guy in this fight. Ziam's actually the younger guy here at 24. But I almost feel like you're right. Like there's pressure on that. And this is like a really popular guy on like MMA Twitter, right? Like people really like enjoy him. They like his takes, all this stuff. I think there's going to be more money coming in on Terrance McKinney just out of pure fandom, like not even looking at the stats, not even looking at the fights or anything like that. There's going to be like, well, this guy got a record-setting win, so of course I'm going to put some money on him. I love this guy. Like I could see more money coming in because of that, whereas Ziam's not really like a known guy, in terms of like, media and all that stuff. So I think that's going to play into this as well. And look at who he finished in his last fight, Matt Vervola. I love Matt. Matt, again, great fighter, but Matt's been knocked out before. Like this isn't something new that's happened in his career. So I almost feel like it was the perfect storm where McKinney, remember, had that debut on like a couple days notice, came in, knocked him out. He fought a guy that's been knocked out before. Like we know it was possible, or knew it was possible, I should say. So I kind of feel like McKinney's a little bit, not overrated, but I'm almost wanting to say that, but you know what I mean? It's like, I feel like he's riding on that a lot. And I think people are forgetting that he had some key losses. Derek Minner beat him as well. I granted it was a featherweight, but still, like that's a loss that he had on the regional scene that I think people forget about. So Ziam also going to be bigger in this fight. He's 6'1", another guy who's pretty big for the weight class, 6'1" with a 75-inch reach. McKinney is 5'10" with a 74-inch reach. So a little bit bigger there for Ziam. I'm liking Ziam in this fight to get it done. I'm going to go decision. I think McKinney throws leather in the first round, doesn't end up hitting his opponent, and that's where Ziam's going to take over as the fight goes on. I see him winning like 2 and 3 and then getting a decision here. Maybe he gets a finish later on, but I like Ziam in this fight. I think he gets it done. I think the line's right where it needs to be.
Okay. I'm glad. Once again, James, you and I tend to be kind of on the same side here. But I think a lot of the comments in the chat are definitely bringing some things to the table that we should consider.
Sure.
There's going to be a lot of public money on Terrance McKinney. There's going to be a lot of people who are looking to this kid to be, you know, a big deal, and they're going to be trying to put their money on and back him. So I think if you like the not the McKinney side, sorry, if you like the Ziam side, wait. You know, that line probably is going to flip by fight time. So I'm just going to kind of wait it out and see what happens.
I would recommend that too.
I do think there's a potential live betting situation here. Shout out to my guy Danny, one of the Pub Sports radio personalities here.
I love Danny.
Yeah, I love Danny. My Fireball partner there on live streams on Saturdays. He's saying a live betting opportunity, which I think is perfect because we know T-Rex is going to come hard in round one, and we've seen what happens when he doesn't get it done in round one. I don't think that Ziam is going to engage in a firefight. So if he survives round one, we're probably going to get a much better line on him going into round two. There's not a whole lot of world where I see Ziam being a bigger favorite in the start of the second round, James. I mean, the way he fights, what he does, unless he KOs T-Rex in that first round, he's going to be a big underdog after giving up takedowns or apparently looking like he's running away or, you know what I mean, being on the back foot in the striking. So probably a good live betting opportunity there as well. I'm not sure how I want to approach it just yet, but I do think maybe Ziam's the side. Maybe getting a better line on him later in the week is the move.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. There's a fight recently where that happened where I was kind of like, just wait to see. Actually, you know what? Even next week that might happen with Masvidal and Colby, where people love Masvidal, they hate Colby. They're going to keep betting Masvidal and maybe pushing the line one way or the other. But, you know, things like that where you look at like a popular fighter, you got to keep that in mind closer to fight time. So definitely understand that strategy for sure.
Yeah. And a lot of people in the chat talking about the grappling advantage for Terrance McKinney. And trust me, guys, I get it, but that's kind of something where, James, I want to hear your thoughts on this. I mentioned the pressure that's being put on him. You know, he comes out and he starches a very popular fighter with a big 1-2 down the pipe, and everyone's talking about how quickly he finishes everybody. I almost wonder if he comes out looking for more of that. We've seen fighters fall in love with their hands. You know what I mean? We've seen
Ronda
Rousey, primary grapplers who fall in love with their hands because of the fame and the fortune that comes with starching somebody on the feet the way that they do. If he's got all this pressure on him, if people keep running that highlight reel, keep talking to him about how incredible he's been and you got to finish, you're going to knock this guy out, like a young kid like that can get caught up in all that. I'm not banking on Terrance McKinney to wrestle in this fight because I could see him getting swayed into coming out swinging again. Yeah,
no, very, very well said. And yeah, like you mentioned, the pressure, living up to that expectation of that first fight, very tough to do.
Absolutely. All right. Let's go ahead and move this one along. I know the internet's basically going to be breaking on that fight because anybody not on the T-Rex side is going to get the shame, the big red S of shame put on them for it. We have got 269 live viewers, folks. Thank you all so much for jumping in here. We're inching ever so close to that 300. Keep it up, folks. Love you guys. Thank you for the support. Jinh Frey taking on Hannah Goldy, James, in another fight that, well, it's a fight. Yeah. This is one we get to break down. This is one we get to talk about. We have got my girl, Jinh Frey, who this is a head scratcher for me, James. This one that I got to do nothing but sit back and laugh about this. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. She was the 105 Invicta champion, right? Jinh Frey absolutely has a ton of experience under her belt, fought some very good caliber opponents, 36 years old. She's very physically strong. She relies on that grappling to get these wins. Now, she does have some decent power in her hands. She's got a good left hand, good calf kicks, very meat and potatoes striking on the feet, though, not something that she's super well known for or anything like that. She really struggles when her opponents are either stronger than her or better grapplers than her. She averages about 2.86 significant strikes a minute, absorbing 4.06. So she's been massively outstruck so far in her UFC run. Now, Hannah Goldy, she's an absolute tank. Now, she's part of the the OnlyFans crew here in the UFC, so she's absolutely got some fan support for what she brings to the table, but she has been working really hard on her MMA game. She's been training with guys like Phil Rowe, training with my girl Jillian Robertson, who we know I have documented since I caught on to this, James, that fighters who bring Jillian Robertson for their camp have gone on to win by submission the last 3 times that it has taken place. Hannah Goldy was one of those winners, in her last submission win over Whitmire. She has a 50% takedown defense, which is a little concerning that she can kind of get put on the ground a little bit clean, a little bit early. But her last fight was up at 125. She's dropping back down to her more native 115, where she's a bit more of a size bully monster down there. And it seems like Hannah Goldy's really starting to round out her game, James, if I'm being honest. I know she doesn't look super clean and pretty, but you can see those little adjustments and improvements every single fight out. I'm going to just go ahead and put that up there. Go ahead and put that up there. 1-800-GAMBLER for everybody. You know it's coming. Call the orderlies, folks. Call the orderlies. James, I am betting on Hannah Goldy in this spot. I've already locked in the bets. We've got Jinh Frey, who is a minus 190-ish favorite, minus 200. You can get plus 155, plus 160 on Hannah Goldy. I did lock up plus 160 in this spot. And I'm going to keep watching this line. I may be intrigued and potentially adding more to this later on. I know people, that sounds a little bit crazy. But what I want to talk through is kind of my process here. If you don't mind, James, can I have a minute?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Go for it. I'm not gonna. This is your show, man. I'm not gonna interrupt.
No, but this one could go a little long on us, longer than it should for this level of a fight. So I'm gonna bust out the old tinfoil cap here. She's got Jinh Frey has a 90% takedown defense rating, and we got to look at her opponents. That comes against Kay Hansen, who went 2 for 11 on her takedowns in that fight. She only has a 21% takedown accuracy rating overall and is 1-2 in the UFC, with her only win being over none other than Jinh Frey. Loma Lukbunmi, who only attempted one takedown, who never attempts takedowns, went 0-1, 38% takedown accuracy. Gloria DePaula didn't even attempt a takedown in that fight. That was all one-sided wrestling action from Jinh Frey. And Yoder, who went 0 for 8 in their fight and has a 30% takedown accuracy rating and is 3-7 in the UFC. James, what I don't get is that everybody in the comment section bashing on Hannah Goldy, talking about how Jinh Frey is the lock here, they were rushing hand over fist to pile money on Ashley Yoder as the chalk in the last fight, James. They were laying wood on Ashley Yoder against this woman. Now, I personally have had some respect for Jinh Frey. I cashed a dog ticket on her that last time out. I've bet on her a couple times as an underdog, and she's done okay for us so far in the UFC. But the fact is, she's older. She belongs at 105. 115 is fighting up a class for her. And when she can't control her opponent in the grappling, she loses. Hannah Goldy is a massive monster of a woman who's dropping down to 115 from 125 and is going to have a significant size and strength advantage here in this spot. And the way that she strikes, James, she is going to have such a significant striking advantage in this spot. It's a point striking game. Quick strikes, not power strikes, nice jab, good footwork, attacks the low calf. She's not hurting anybody with these strikes, but she is absolutely scoring with them. And then if they end up in grappling spots, she's been working hard with my girl Jillian. Her grappling game is far improved. And if Jinh Frey relies on power to get this girl to the floor, I don't think it's happening. I think plus 160 is a bit of a gift in this spot. I think this is a spot where, kind of like we talked about before, the UFC is trying to figure out who the prospect is. This is a sell on Jinh Frey, James. This is a spot to get a name, a passing of the torch, for Hannah Goldy. If she belongs here, if she's improving the way that it seems that she is, she should win this spot and be able to get a notable win on her record. I'm all for it, man. I think Hannah Goldy is a sweet spot this week. I think people are underestimating her, and I think people, for some reason, are thinking that because Jinh Frey beat Ashley Yoder, she's some kind of world beater here. It's a combination of overestimating one and underestimating the under. There's no way Jinh Frey should be a minus 200 favorite here. James, tell me I'm wrong.
You're partially right, partially wrong. I agree with you that they obviously want Hannah Goldy to win this fight. She's younger. They don't want a 36-year-old to, continue to rise up the division and, challenge, Rose Namajunas. That's not what they're trying to do here with Jinh Frey. Absolutely not. But what I look at here is like, what are we getting with Hannah Goldy? Like, I did interview her ahead of this fight again on the UFC Vegas 49 playlist. Sports psychologist, she's been working with one of those. The Fusion XL, like you mentioned, getting a lot of training in there. She said she brought in a lot of girls too for this camp. So, some of the names she mentioned I wasn't really familiar with, but obviously working with Jillian's going to be in her corner for this fight, by the way. And they fought, if you remember, in her first pro fight, she actually beat Jillian Robertson. So there's a weird connection there, but they're friends. She's going to be in her corner for this fight, so that'll be interesting here. I agree with you about the fact that Jinh Frey is a small, she's an atom weight, right? But I don't know, that experience, that's kind of what I look at here, is the fact that, Hannah Goldy's only got 8 fights. You've got an opponent who's got 17 fights. That's a big gap in experience. And to be honest, I haven't been impressed by either, because I know Goldy had the short notice debut against Miranda Granger, didn't look great there. Then they had that huge layoff, came back only to lose her next fight against Diana Belbita, which now looking back on that, that's a pretty bad loss. Although I did think, the Belbita fight last week, and we could talk about that later, but and then beat Emily Whitmire, who's a 500 fighter as well. So it's I don't know, we're almost banking, I said this on my preview show this morning, it's we're almost banking on Hannah being a much improved, better version, but is that better version enough to beat Jinh Frey? Remember the loss to Kay Hansen, by the way, that was a fight I thought she was winning, ended up making a mistake, ended up losing the fight. This is a pass to me. I'm going to pick Jinh Frey just because of the experience, but I can't, I know where you're coming from, and I definitely respect the dog money on the up and comer. I understand that, but I just I feel like you're almost not guessing, but you're hoping that Hannah's going to really put it together. And I don't have enough proof of that. So I'm going with Jinh Frey in this fight. Maybe the over. A lot of the women's fights seem to go that way. Although again, I got burned last week. Stephanie Egger. Jessica Rose Clark's never been finished in the UFC, and well, at least not in that weight class. And Edgar does it in the first round. Really bad performance there by Jessie Jess. But yeah, so I think this fight will probably go the distance. We'll see. It's 3 rounds, but yeah, I'm going Jinh Frey in this fight. I'm going the other way, Clint. Sorry, can't agree on everything.
Okay. You know what, James? It is no fun if we agree on everything. So that is all good, my friend. I appreciate it. I got to laugh here at Mbe in the chat. Frey beat DePaula, who beat Belbita, who beat Goldy. MMA math. Got to love it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
That's classic MMA math for you, the paper, rock, scissors of the UFC. I am taking a little bit of a leap of faith here, James, as far as the improvements and stuff like that Goldy is making. But in my opinion, you've been able to see those slight improvements every single fight. Even in her last fight where she did get dumped, she did get put on her back. She snapped the girl's arm off. And she is so freaking strong. She was able to completely overpower her once she had a grip on that arm. It wasn't going anywhere. And we have seen Jinh Frey submitted as well on the mat. So I think that, just her raw power and squeeze can make the difference. Her dropping back down to 115, I also think is a decent factor. And we have seen the corner that Jillian Robertson has turned. She is now, she's gone from being prospect to just outside the top 10, top 15 again. You know what I mean? Everyone thought she was going to turn into a bit of a gatekeeper. She's turned it around, and people have high hopes for her again. That's a good partner to be working with. That's a good person to have in your corner, especially if we think there's going to be a grappling heavy game plan. So I know I'm kind of going against the grain here. And like I said, 1 unit shot, plus 160. I'm going to watch that line, because if y'all give me plus 200 or something stupid, I'll throw another unit on it. I think Hannah Goldy is going to be able to pass this test.
Yeah, I get it. Like I said, I get it. I can't do it. I don't know what it is.
Yep. I feel you, though. I get you, James. I've made a habit out of making bad bets, though. You know that.
Yeah. You know what? You take risks, man. I respect that. There's a lot of guys who do this that, all they play is chalk, and then, they're bragging about, I took a big favorite. And I parlayed it. It's yeah, but everyone knew they were going to win. You take some risks. I admire that, man. I've always had that about you. I admire that. So.
I appreciate that, James. Hey, we are 11 people short of hitting that 300 mark. Let's go. Come on. Let's get me there. Don't make me bust out the Trump huge impression again. I'll do it if I have to get us to 300. I promise. All right. We have got Alejandro Perez taking on Jonathan Martinez in another fight that should probably be the co-main events. This is going to be a barn burner, James. This one is so freaking fun. So Perez disappears off the scene after being melted by Song Yadong a couple years ago. And everybody, honestly, myself included, forgot he existed. I didn't even know this guy was still fighting when he came back and had his fight against Eduardo last time out. 22-8-1, big time experience. Fighting a guy like Song Yadong, the UFC wanted him at a certain particular level. They think something of him. That's it speaks to that. And he's only 32. I kind of thought he was a bit older. I thought he was 35, 36, that kind of thing. But the kid's still got some years left in him here if he plays his cards right. He's very heavy on the feet. He's got fast hands, and he kind of likes to force a bit of a technical brawl. Very physically strong, likes to rip the body and throw overhands to try and end the fight early. And then he's got underrated grappling. He's got good, solid wrestling, decent transition game, good submissions. 70% takedown defense rating. Massively impressive considering that fight with Cody Stamann. I talked about this on the last breakdown with him last time around. He didn't surrender a single takedown to Cody Stamann. And on top of that, he kind of out-muscled Cody Stamann in that fight. There was a moment where he bodied Stamann to the floor. And that's something that most people just don't do. So pretty impressive what Perez has been capable of. Jonathan Martinez, 14-2. This guy is a dangerous finisher. I mean, he gets in there and he goes to work on anybody and everybody the UFC lines him up against. He fights very well at range. He's usually longer than his opponents, and he knows how to use it. He's got that step-in knee that he likes that catches people off guard, nasty, hard leg kicks, and he sits on his punches. He's one of these guys that it's like he's throwing 60% with every single shot, but you can see the effect and you can hear the impact every time he lands anything. He's got that left hand constantly cocked and just rips away with it. When he gets in close, he likes to switch up to elbows, and he's got power in those too. Man, he came out after suffering that loss to Dangerous Davey Grant, who he rocked early in the first round of that fight, by the way. Ended up putting 90-plus significant strikes on Lavashvili. Really impressive comeback performance. He's got a 72% takedown defense rating, so he's no slouch in the grappling department, and he's got a 5-inch reach advantage. I think that Jonathan Martinez is a guy that is going to be able to rebound here, James. I know that Alejandro Perez has got some backclass. I know he's got some experience, and he's not someone that you necessarily should be looking past, but I'm picking the dragon here in this spot. We have got Perez. I don't know why it's not coming up here. Minus 225, minus 220. There's a couple minus 230s popping up here on Jonathan Martinez. So you can get Perez as a plus 180, plus 190 underdog here. James, which side are you falling on for this one?
I'm going Martinez as well, but I think this could be a bit of a trap. And the reason I mention that is some of the stuff you talked about there with Perez. I think he's a little underrated. Like, you look at some of those losses, the Stamann fight and close fight there. You look at the fight that he's had with even Song Yadong. Yeah, he got knocked out in that fight, but I don't know. Like, I feel like that he was kind of off in that matchup. And I know all of his wins, actually, now that I'm looking here, are against guys that aren't even in the UFC for the most part. Like Ian Entwistle, Scott Jorgensen, Matt Lopez, Eddie Wineland, I'm pretty sure is retired. So none of those really aged well. But the thing with Martinez is, like, I feel like sometimes he's like pretty competitive in the fight, and then he's out of nowhere like gets like a flying knee finish or something. Or in the case of the Davey Grant fight, he was doing well and then he gets finished. So it's like, I think Martinez is a bit of a question mark too. Like, he should win. He's a younger guy. He's got some serious knockout power. Perez has been very inactive over the last couple of years as well. Like, just hasn't really shown it. But I just want to warn people, like, I don't think Martinez is like this deadlock that some people I see are saying. I'm a little hesitant on him. Like, I'm going to pick him. I think he gets it done. I think the fight probably doesn't go the distance, but I don't know. I'm just a little weary on Martinez for whatever reason after that Davey Grant fight, especially.
Okay, and I think that's fair, James. I absolutely think that's fair. But I am more kind of in that deadlock category that you were mentioning just a minute ago.
Okay.
And the reason for that is I'm going to pull like my crystal ball out for this one. I know this isn't super easy to do, but one thing that I've noticed running back Alejandro Perez's tape. Geez, Alex Perez, Alejandro Perez, they're almost the same guy. Yeah. The way they fight too, actually. Now, we always talk about the doppelgangers in MMA. There we go. We found another pair, folks.
Yeah.
Alejandro Perez, James, he drops his left hand. This is a spot where I have seen on the tape, even against Eduardo. Eduardo was getting off on that lead left hook. And this is a southpaw versus orthodox matchup where the power left hand of Jonathan Martinez is going to be his main weapon. Now, the offsetting stances is going to maybe make it a little bit harder for him to land, but we've seen Perez drop that outside guard whenever he goes for broke, and he gets clipped with those left hands constantly, on repeat. It's a hole in his game, and I think it's the best strike that Jonathan Martinez has to offer. I think Martinez is going to flatline him, James. I think this is a spot where, because that's his best weapon and because his opponent is open to that weapon, I can see him just landing it on repeat throughout this fight. I think his takedown defense is good enough for him to keep the fight standing, and I think he'll be able to keep this thing at striking range. He mixes up his attacks, so it's not like he's going to go back to the well and become predictable, but when he decides to let loose that left hand, I think it's going to land with authority. I've got Martinez winning this thing handily and by knockout.
Okay, there you go. More confident than I am, but again, look, if we're talking on Monday about a Jonathan Martinez knockout, I'm not going to be shocked here. I don't know. There's something about him I'm not like 100% sold on, but we'll see how he looks on Saturday.
Yeah, we'll have to circle back and see if I'm right on that one. But I'm absolutely taking the knockout prop on this fight, folks. I don't know how I want to approach it from a betting perspective. I kind of talked about a couple favorites I liked a little bit earlier, so maybe he is parlay material at that nice, 200 line mark. That's where it's easy to get even money on these types of spots. But honestly, the way I'm reading this fight, I again might just load up and do the hammer here instead of mixing him in with anybody that might potentially blow the sweet spot. Maybe play him straight, suck it up, lay that chalk, and just get out of here with a couple of easy units if he's able to pull off what I think he can do.
Yeah, no, understand it for sure.
Sometimes hard to lay that kind of wood, James. It's a little bit terrifying, but sometimes that's the way to go.
Yep.
We are winding down here, folks. 267 live viewers. We fell away from the 300 mark. I'm so sad. 2 more fights to talk about, everybody. Hang in there. Ramiz Brahimaj taking on Michael Gilmore. And Ramiz Brahimaj is filling in on short notice here in this spot. Seems like he has sniped an opponent who might be somebody who he feels he can beat because, geez, Ramiz is just a busted prospect for the UFC based on what we were expecting from him at this point. Completely derailed hype train. We know he's an incredible grappler, James. That's what this man does. If he gets it to the floor, he slices through guards like butter. But he's really got to get it to the floor to win. His striking has a long mid-tier fighter at this point. He likes to chop down the legs, and he's got a big, powerful right hand. So I'm not saying that he's dead. I put out a tweet, James, that I was like, ooh, look, I've got an opportunity to fade Ramiz Brahimaj again. After digging into the tape, man, I don't know if I have an opportunity to fade Ramiz Brahimaj because Michael Gilmore really gives up the grappling. He gasses out, and then he gets submitted. That's kind of his whole thing right now. And if that's your weakness, that's the power of Ramiz Brahimaj. So I think this could be a potential issue for Michael Gilmore. I think that those 4 sub losses are going to hold up here, and I think Ramiz found someone who he can snipe and get the win there. James, what do you think? How's this one going to go?
Yeah, I agree with that. Obviously, he's not going to jump in an opportunity like this unless it's lucrative for him. Michael Gilmore, we should mention, is dropping down a weight class. Remember, his debut was at 85. He fought at 85 on the show. This is a 170 fight, so that will give him a bit of an advantage fighting in his natural weight class. Had a chance to speak to Michael Gilmore. Still waiting for the outlet to post it. I gave him another nudge today, so hopefully that'll get up here soon. But teammate of Jamal Hill and Joaquin Buckley over there in Michigan, trained with some really good guys. Talked about having a full camp this time around, and I think that's something because that the UFC debut was kind of a short notice for both guys. He wasn't sure if he was even going to get the opportunity. He gets it on like a week's notice. Obviously, it didn't go his way. But I think the line's a little bit off here. Like, obviously, it's a tailor-made fight for Ramiz to win. I just, with Ramiz and how he's fought in the UFC so far, I don't know if he's like a minus 300 favorite is what I'm seeing on a lot of these lines here. I think Gilmore's going to look better than people expect, but like you mentioned, styles make fights, and I think this is a fight where Ramiz is going to capitalize and look really good, and I think he gets it done over Michael Gilmore. Just pointing those things out just because, again, I know some people are going to be like, oh, obvious fight, Ramiz is going to win, but I don't know, minus 300, a little too steep. Maybe I look at that submission prop instead and go that route or inside the distance. You never know. But and also, Gilmore's 34, Ramiz a little bit younger there at 29. So that's another reason to like him in this fight. I'm going Ramiz to get it done.
Okay. Glad we agree on that one, James. I mean, it's hard to argue with the big chalky favorites coming through and getting it done the way that they're supposed to. This is one, though, I'm going to keep on my radar for the live betting because if I'm being honest, someone like Ramiz, the holes we've seen in his game, if Gilmore on that full camp is looking good, if he's looking fresh, if he's landing on the feet, maybe if he survives an encounter on the ground or two and extends this fight, we could be looking at a big fat number and a very live dog later on in this fight, round 2, round 3, that kind of situation. But at this point, I have been kind of spooked off of my fade of Ramiz Brahimaj. I wanted to, folks. I wanted to really badly, but I just don't think this is the one. Ramiz probably gets this layup win here. I'm hoping everything's better for everybody. I saw a couple of people commenting we were having a bit of lag issues. Apologies if that was a thing. I never got notified of an issue on my end, so hopefully we're okay.
It's fine on my end too, but I'm not the host. But
all right. Hey, if it's working for you, we should be okay because we're directly connected here.
Oh, well, there you go. That's all that matters.
You look like you were about to say something, James. Did you have something to add to that whole thing?
Oh, no, I didn't. No, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Just making sure I'm not ruining your opportunity.
I'd give you a hard time if that was the case. You know that.
That's true. Fair. All right, everybody. First fight of the night, last fight of the breakdown. Victor. Oh, geez. I didn't practice this.
I butchered his name this morning, too, so don't worry about it.
Victor Altamirano taking on Carlos Hernandez. We're just going to call him Victor. Usually, James, I try to look up, had these pronunciations, and I practiced them a couple times. Totally forgot to on that one. Just kind of read it and ran on by. So apologies out there for butchering that particular name. This is a fun fight to start the evening off, in my opinion. You know, Victor is 10-1. His opponent, Carlos, is 7-1. Couple of Dana White Contender Series guys. You all know I like my Dana White Contender Series fade. It's not happening here because both these guys are making their UFC debuts off the Contender Series. And this is actually the kind of matchup I like to see from Contender Series guys. I love to see them go against each other and see who legitimately belongs at this level when they're not like the super hype prospects like we were talking about before, but just maybe solid what-if type of guys. We've got Victor, who comes in here with a Taekwondo base, very athletic, likes to be aggressive, fires off lots of kicks. He's got a good front kick. I like that teep kick that he fires. Another guy that keeps his hands low and plays just a little bit. He's a bit awkward at close range. You know, that long, rangy kicking style. He has a problem once he gets in kind of tight in boxing. But he does switch up the attacks and does elbows and things like that from that range. He attacks front chokes. He's a BJJ brown belt. The problem I have with him is he kind of gives up takedowns easily, and we've seen him play from his back a little bit. Now, he does the Tony Ferguson elbows from his back thing. He does like to stay active and slap his opponent from his back, stuff like that. But I'd like to see a bit more urgency for him getting back up to his feet when he gets taken down. He hit a pretty sweet butterfly sweep from his back on the Contender Series, so you know he's got that in his back pocket. But, man, he comes in strong in round 3. That's something I noticed about this kid. He's got a good gas tank. He never stops coming forward and never gives up. So I like the heart. I like the effort. I like the gas tank. He's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage over Carlos. And Carlos is much more of a wrestler, kind of the opposite force here, the yin and yang of the UFC. We've got the Muay Thai Jiu-Jitsu versus the Wrestle Boxer matchup here. Carlos is very light on his feet. He's got nice hard leg kicks that he likes to attack with, and he really leans into his opponent. You know, he kind of leans forward and throws 3 and 4 punch combos right down the pipe. Decent level changes on him, good head movement. I like what I see from him there. One thing that kind of was a little bit of a red flag for me, though, when he got on his opponent's back on the Contender Series, he had like a full round of back control. Flattened his opponent out completely. Still couldn't get the tap. So, like, I wonder about his skills in the BJJ realm when he has the opportunity to get in a scramble with someone who just earned their brown belt. Really poor level of competition from Carlos's opponents. You look down at the records of the guys he was facing to get to this point, and while he's got some skills, he just has been running through bad competition to do it. I kind of lean to Victor here, James. He's a slight underdog. I'm not overly impressed with either guy. It should be a fun scrap, but it's a dog or pass spot for me. You've got Carlos as a minus 125 favorite, plus 105 or even money. A little bit of love coming in here on Victor to drive that thing back down to even money. I think the plus money is kind of the way to go. I like Victor ever so slightly. James, what about you?
I'm going Carlos, but this is, and again, like such a crapshoot because you got 2 Contender Series guys making their debuts. Typically with Contender Series, you're not going to have great competition on the regional scene, even on both ends here. This was one right off the bat. I said this morning, I don't have a great read on it. I mean, I've only seen them on Contender Series. I haven't seen a lot of their other fights. I'm kind of going off stats, patterns, things like that. There's not even like a big like age gap here, like 31 to 28. That's not a huge gap. Height and reach wise, they're both 5'8", 70.5 inch reach for Victor, 67 inch reach for Carlos Hernandez. I guess, like I said, I'm only kind of taking Carlos because he's a bit younger, but really like neither guy is really like, yeah, they look good on Contender Series, but it's like, I don't know, like I think that's not enough of a sample size for me to be like, oh, you know, I'm super confident here. And we've seen guys when they make that UFC jump, they you know, they tend to look different, right? Like some guys are just, whether it's the jitters or other things, like they don't really live up to what we saw in the Contender Series. So I'm definitely passing on this fight. I can see your logic in taking the dog here because, again, you get dog money. Why not take advantage of it? But I think I'm taking Carlos Hernandez here. Just maybe again, I know he went split on the Contender Series. His opponent got the finish, but yeah, just he's younger. I'm going to take him. That's kind of my only reason, honestly. Like I don't have a great read on this fight.
I hear you, James, and I can totally understand that, man. This is one of those spots where I'm not overly confident whatsoever in. I'm looking at this guy because I kind of like the makeup of his game a little better. I like that he potentially has that submission advantage once his opponent takes him down. And I'm not overly impressed with Carlos Hernandez. And when you got these mid to low level grapplers going at it, I'll take the higher belt guy. I think wrestling kind of stifles jiu-jitsu sometimes, but I don't think Carlos Hernandez is that great of a wrestler. So that's kind of my reasoning on that. A couple people in the chat mentioning that third round sprinkle. That's probably going to happen for me on Victor because I could see him coming out in that third round and just being the fresher guy, wanting it more and going for broke there late in the fight. But this is not one that's high on my list of betting. And believe it or not, I know people are upset at me for feeling confident on Hannah Goldy, but I'm more confident on Hannah Goldy than putting money on either of these guys. I like that spot far more. So I don't know that I'm going to have a real bet on this first fight of the night, James, but it should be a fun one nonetheless.
Yeah, no, totally with you there. And, they obviously put it on here for a reason to kind of elevate the rest of the card, right? So,
Yep. Nice little appetizer for us. James, thank you so much for taking the time to jump on this podcast with us. We just broke down all of UFC Vegas 49. Appreciate you, my friend, for coming on. And if you want to shout out your sponsors, let the people know where they can find you. And, of course, any projects you've got going on, now's the time, man. Have at it.
Always a pleasure. Always enjoy doing this show. I know schedule wise, it can be tough, but you always give me the good notice. I can negotiate, with the parental, my wife, I should say, and trying to make this happen. Sorry again for my kid coming in here. It's a holiday here. Well, it's a holiday for you guys too. I realize that as well. Right. So, but here we have a family day here in Canada. So I was working, but you know how it is. So if your audience wants to check me out, Twitter, Instagram at Lynch on Sports, the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Lynch on Sports. I put all my interviews on there in playlists. So they're easy to find. I work for a ton of different outlets, including Pub Sports, who I love. You can find all the content, like I said, in specific playlists. Got a lot of interviews for UFC Vegas 49. Also talked to Chris Dawkins recently, who's going to be fighting Curtis Blades. Talked to Macy Barber ahead of her fight with Montana De La Rosa. What are some other interviews in the works that I got done? Yeah, just those are just two that came to mind. Recently today, I did a whole bunch. Tristan Connolly, Mario Batista, Kyle Dawkins. The list goes on. I'm a busy guy, but always enjoy doing your show. And thanks to everyone who tuned in. Love doing the show, man. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, man. You're one of the OG guests, and like I said, we really appreciate your time. Before the podcast really took off and I was anybody, you were one of the first ones to give me a piece of your time, so always appreciate you coming on. And everybody, I always ask for your support because for podcasts and live shows, that's the only way we survive is with the fan support. But please make sure you go support my guy, James. He really is the best interviewer in the business and asks good questions. You get good info from all of his interviews, and without guys like him, we would have a much harder job doing the sports gambling that we so enjoy. So make sure you go subscribe to his channel, check out his content, smash every like button on his videos to make sure we continue supporting the guys that come on and help us out here with these shows. Everybody, thank you very much. Happy holiday, no matter where you are at. Hopefully we can get the ball rolling and keep this nice blue shirt on with the Die Hard stimulus check and winning evenings. I got to get my ass back in the black when it comes to gambling. Hopefully this fun little dumpster diving card here on Saturday can help us get there. Everybody be careful. Remember, bankroll management is important. Never overreach on anything. Bet responsibly within what you're able to do without, worrying about paying rent or putting food on the table. Please gamble responsibly out there, guys. That's all I got for you. James, we rarely get this opportunity. Are we betting the Canucks tonight?
They're playing the Kraken. I was at the game on Saturday and they did not show up at all. They let in 3 goals within the first 4 minutes. Demko's in net tonight. They should beat the Kraken, right? You got to respond after a loss like that. 7-4 is what they lost. I think we got to bet the Canucks.
I'm right there with you, James. I mean, after that kind of an embarrassing performance against a pretty bad team
I know. Ducks aren't even a playoff team. Well, they're kind of a playoff team, but they shouldn't have lost 7-4. That was ridiculous.
It was embarrassing was the thing. And now they're playing the Kraken, who are not a great team. I trust Demko to not have 2 bad nights in a row. I'm going to be with you there. Let's have some degenerate hockey action here on the Canucks.
Do it. I love it.
All right, everybody. There you go. Thank you so much for joining us and have a wonderful week. We'll see you later on this week for the Total Takedown and, of course, the undefeated post-weigh-in show, which I can comfortably say undefeated again after this last week's performance. We'll see you guys later. Let's roll.